Hello, Tarot Rebels. I am Michaela from Tarot Rebel, and this is my YouTube channel. Welcome. I post here a lot of my thoughts, experiences, ideas, and sometimes I post tarot readings, which hasn't happened in a while. But if you want to book a reading with me, the details to do that are in the description box down below. And you can message me, contact me via email, social media, eBay, your choice, obviously. That being said, I wanted to address something. I know I've been quite absent lately, and this is not an excuse, but there's a lot going on in my life. And I've recently started doing a lot of in-person tarot readings in my area. So my focus shifted a bit towards that. I couldn't help but notice that I actually wasn't the only one absent in the community. I feel like there are so many changes in the tarot community for all sorts of reasons, and we're losing members, we're gaining new ones, and yet it feels like, despite this roller coaster of emotions and events in this community, my emotions are stale in terms of how I react to tarot anyway. It's not just the content. It feels like after 2 years of going through a lot of shared experiences, spiritual people are feeling a bit drained. Others are feeling a bit curious, obviously, and that's a great thing for our community. But we've gone through a pandemic, and I'm aware that it's not over. We're going through economic instability, financial crisis, housing crisis, social crisis, a war, and along with uncertainty about our future as a society and as a planet, we're just trying to survive, right? And people have turned to us for guidance and comfort, validation, support, and the question is, I guess, because this is what I've been experiencing lately, how are we supporting ourselves? Where do we go to find comfort and guidance for ourselves? My question to our tarot community would be, how do you recharge? How do you deal with loss and pain, with confusion and misguided aggression sometimes? Obviously, trolling online or even in person, bullying, they're never okay, but I feel like on one side we have the support of so many people, and we have internal and external as well from the community and from outside of our community. But we also experience aggression from online people, online trolls, and in-person bullies. Like, I've had so many people come to my readings and say, I don't believe any of this. Please don't take out any of the bad cards or things like that. So it's just overwhelming to deal with extreme emotions, I guess. Maybe I should make this in form of tag, that way anyone can pick it up, and I would welcome to see your methods, your coping methods, I guess. And without further ado, because I know my setup is quite busy, because I want to discuss a couple of things, I'm gonna put these aside. So I started drafting this as a form of journaling, because my first question would be, where do you go when your creative juices aren't flowing? And for me, it is indeed journaling. I have here my journal. I filmed a couple of videos based on some of my notes in my journal. I'm not sure if I'm ready to share this Some of them are poems, some of them are just thoughts, some of them are random downloads that I got. But yeah, when I feel I lack creativity and excitement and inspiration, I go to this bad boy. I sit down and write. I know some people in the community, they just sling their cards, and that's fine. I do that too as a form of self-comfort. But the way I do it to recharge is sit down, listen to nature sounds, especially because it's available because of the technology, the world we live in. And actually saying that out loud makes me feel bad, because I could go out and experience that in real time, but I never do, hence the burnout. And I write on paper thoughts and words I wish someone would say to me. It's an instant pick-me-up in a way. It's a bit sad to know that other people can't spot that need in me. But it gives me the time to ponder and to sit with my discomfort and understand it. And that's valuable to me. What's my go-to content when the world is too loud? I personally listen to music, all sorts of music. I'm going through a phase where I just listen to a lot of synthwave and hyperpop, because it's so loud, boastful, and at the same time it just drowns out the negativity in me. When things are too much, I don't want to learn, I don't want to act, I don't want to react. I just want to sit there with my thoughts and feelings and try to understand it. And music is such a good vehicle for that, for me personally. What's your comfort setup in your holy safe space and altar? I included this question mainly because I don't have an altar. I don't have a holy space. I'm transitioning right now, so space is limited anyway. But I usually go to my desk, which is not this, because it's full of computer equipment and stuff like that. It's not aesthetically pleasing because I'm a messy person. I don't have an aesthetic going on, and it's actually private because I have work stuff and personal stuff on my desk, and I don't want to clean that now. I do take out my journal, again, my trusty journal, and shuffle my cards, burn some incense, some sage, and do a ritual to ground myself. It makes me feel safe, it makes me feel at peace, and most of all, it makes me feel loved. Now, I'm gonna go to decks because there's a lot of decks I want to name and shame today. It's not shameful anyway, but it sounded good in my head. My go-to deck in this time when nothing makes sense is the Majestic Earth. It has such a dreamlike quality to it. I'm so happy I purchased it in the end. And this deck is a pleasure to work for self-improvement, which is how I use tarot anyway. I can immerse myself in the images and daydream about adventures, but I can also try and picture myself in the images and observe my reaction. It's always spot on as a reader, and I guess even if it doesn't have any humans in it, like this Five of Stone is one of the best Five of Pentacles depiction I've ever seen, if I've seen one. I'm trying to make this camera focus, but I don't think I'm getting too much success from there. It's a comforting deck, even with the most confrontational cards, like the Tempest, for example. This is the Devil card. There's something about this deck that makes me feel comforted in the decisions I make, and because it's so aesthetically pleasing, which is again a quality I don't have, it makes it so easy to get sucked into this world. So yeah, this is my go-to deck when nothing makes sense. Let me put this back in its box. By the way, I do keep my decks in boxes, in their original boxes, if there's one, because I am a klutz and I don't trust myself around stuff. What's your... Sorry, I'm just faffing around. What's your go-to deck when you want to challenge yourself? And it has to be the Mariel. Now, I think I've said this before. I put this deck in order again because I went through a study period. Oh no. So this is the first edition of the Mariel, which I'm so happy and blessed to have right now. I feel like I understand the intention of this deck a bit better. Beware that there's a lot of nudity in this deck. One thing I dislike about the deck is the glossy aspect. You can see everything in it, and also the borders are not even. But I didn't get this. I got this deck for this card specifically because I was trying to understand what was the reason behind this card, and I read the book now, and I think in a way the book is better in the first edition. And what was the reason for changing this? And I understand now how visceral the reaction to this card was, and I'm happy I have this deck now. Again, like with my second edition of the Mariel, this won't be a deck I use for others. This is more of a study deck and a collectible than anything else. However, I feel it's important to connect with the energy of this deck because I feel like there's a lot of work that was put behind this deck, and I think it was quite successful in this endeavor. It's a challenging deck, as I said, not just because of that Hierophant card, but because of all the themes that the deck explores. And honestly, you can do that with the second edition. It has a lot of information anyway, but for me it was important to go back to my roots in a way. What's your go-to deck when all you want is validation? And I have another first edition deck because I managed to buy the White Sage Tarot, the first version in this bigger box. Quality wise, I will say yes, it's the same kind of quality as with the US games. I think I'm sorry, I'm really bad at remembering stuff, but I think the artwork actually fares better in a smaller scale. I feel like the images are just resized, I guess it's the word, and when they're smaller I feel like the quality is better, if that makes sense. I don't know, I'm not a design person. I'm not a technical person. I wouldn't know what to tell you. But it's such a blessing to have this deck, because I use it for myself more than the other deck, which I use for my clients, and everyone loves it. And I think if comfort would have a picture in the dictionary, it would be this deck. Like, you have everything. You have pip cards, working with numerology, you have chakra associations, we have animals. This is one of the loveliest lover cards ever. I think the symbology is relevant, even if it's minimal. So I think this is a great deck for comfort and validation. What is a deck that taught you a lesson, and how did you find that lesson? So I have the Art Revival Tarot, and I mean, it's kind of a blend for me in terms of quality, in terms of intention. I'm not gonna get into details because I think it's a great deck at the end of the day. This is the little book it comes with. I never read it. For some time I've been drawn to biblical / Renaissance kind of images, and revival art, sorry, it does that great. But after a couple of sessions, like I've been doing some events locally, and usually I get multiple decks with me, just because I talk with the person, then I get a certain vibe, a certain energy from them, and then I decide what deck to use. And I started using this deck as soon as I got it. I got it secondhand, and I've been using it for like 2 months now, I guess. And instinctually, every time I touch this deck and every time I used it in my readings, that person has a housing situation. So that was unexpected, because I don't necessarily associate my decks with a certain type of reading. So I don't do love readings with a certain deck, and I don't do financial readings with a certain deck and things like that. So it was interesting, because my clients didn't want to disclose their question, which is fair. Like, I ask people, if you're comfortable with sharing your question, then fine. If not, you can think of it while I shuffle my cards. That's also fine. But I realized I was drawn to using this deck. I've only used it in housing situations, either moving, buying, divorce, stuff like that involved the house. And I go back and forth toying with the idea that some decks have their personality, and then I think to myself, that's silly, because decks are tools and you shouldn't associate personalities with them. But clearly this deck has a very serious earthly tone to it, and I'm not sure if it's the imagery, but maybe that is. But I'm convinced now that this deck can be very fruitful in such situations. How do you give your decks a rest? First of all, I tend to rotate them, because they pick up on a lot of energy, especially if I do events, and I do quite a lot of readings at events. So I tend to rotate them based on how I feel, how tired they feel. It's not based on schedule. So I've recently found myself having to listen to the Psychic Tarot, because this deck was tired. All the cards I pulled for myself, all the cards I pulled for others, they were either very moody, like a teenager not wanting to clean their room or something like that, or very apathetic. I cleansed the deck, I reshuffled. A couple of days later, I I got the world card, so I think now the deck is happy to work again. However, I'm still giving it a break. But I'm happy I listened, and now I found myself in the same situation with one of my Rider-Waite decks, because it's been moody, and I think it needs a break from me. But the point is, sometimes I know previously I said that cards are tools that we use for a certain purpose, but we need to listen to them. They pick up on energies just like us. I personally have been doing readings all week long, and I'm extremely tired. I actually just finished an event like a couple of hours ago, but I understand that I need to get a break from this. So why shouldn't my tools get the same attention and break? Next point is, how do you give yourself a rest? Because we're all living in this maddening world where things happen at a really rapid pace. This summer is quite busy for me, moving, working all weekends, most evenings too, and on top of a full-time job, while trying to handle admin and life and cleaning and cooking and other stuff, and while also trying to have a personal life as well. So it's important to me to allow myself a breather if that's what I need. I'm not out as much as I would like to, but at home I do tend to bless my space more than before. Incense, sage, candles, crystals, making spell bags to help with burnout, creating things with my mind and my hands. This has been a blessing. Obviously, being able to do that, it's a blessing in itself. So that's how I give myself a rest. And last but not least, because I wanted to have 10 items on the list, what's a random thought of the day? So my random thought of the day is that I wish current tarot experience wasn't so driven by instant gratification. What do I mean by that? Because the point is not to offend anyone, but simply speak about my own experience, right? I've waited for 1.5 years for the Aliman Tarot. During this time, I've transformed and became a new person, maybe multiple times. So while I do appreciate the effort put in this deck, and one of the reasons why I supported the deck creation was because I was happy to support multiple artists at the same time. I have the deck, like, it's somewhere there. It's still in a box, it's still sealed. I'm not sure what's going to happen with it. I don't think I align with the deck anymore, and I'm actually thinking of rehoming it. For now, I've put off the decision because there are some things going on in my life this week. But this is something I need to deal with because I'm usually very patient. I waited ages to get my hands on this Mario, right? Because the prices are prohibitive, so I didn't want to fall into that trap of paying too much for an out-of-print deck. And I'm very happy with the outcome. I'm opposed to rushing into things because you want the short-term happiness, right? And instead I like to focus on the long-term goals and plans, and yet something happened with the Aliman deck and it bothers me. I wish I wasn't that fickle. I wish I didn't throw a tantrum, because I kind of did. Internally, I was quite moody on a Facebook group, and I did say, now I'm not sure, I don't want the deck anymore, and I sounded like a bratty child, but I didn't need to do that. But then I go on Facebook groups and I see people complain that their decks were a day late, right? After they ordered them through Amazon out of all the places. And that's an even bigger problem in my book. I've mentioned this before. I won't bore you with all the details. I dislike how we are so deeply dependent on a service that destroyed small businesses, delivery companies, treats their employees unfairly, and has our data basically everywhere, right? And for us to be so reliant on this service, and I get it, some people do not have a metaphysical shop. I think I know only one in my town, and it's a fairly big town in the UK. And yet I've never bought decks from a shop. Oh, no, wait. I bought decks from charity shops, so secondhand decks. But that's beside the point. Why are we so hooked up on I need this deck now? Why do we need this instant gratification? It doesn't sit well with me. It's something I struggle with. It's something I struggle understanding. And apart from destroying businesses and treating their employees like whatever, the sellers that use them aren't better off either. Like, and again, my perpetual question is it all worth it? Is it worth using the service that's basically a disservice to everyone, destroying the planet so that Janet gets her deck today instead of 2 days later? And it's a rant. It's something that's been on my mind lately. Clearly something I need to address, something I need to work with. And hopefully I will. But these are my thoughts of today. Probably, as I said, more of a ramble than usual. I've been away for a while now. I tried filming a couple of times. Either my camera didn't work, my tripod was broken. I filmed something and then I couldn't edit it. Like, so many things in the way. But if you're still here and you still want to hear my thoughts, thank you so much. And as usual, if you want to support my channel, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, all the good things for the good old algorithm. And if you want to message me, email me, contact me on social media, all my details are in the description box down below. Sending you lots of love, healing, and peace. Thanks everyone. Bye.